Hey folks, welcome back to another video. I'm here in the gardens on this beautiful April day and enjoying the lushness as spring comes to life. I wanted to walk around the gardens a little bit and talk about some of the lessons we learned from our first year doing this no-till setup and how we're going to integrate that moving into our second year. Please make sure to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's get into the video. Kales are looking beautiful. We've got a lot of curly green, red Russian, a bit of lacinato, and on these warm days they're just putting on tremendous growth, as is the whole garden. So if you remember from other videos, we established our initial market gardens very quickly after moving to Wild East, and we went with a deep compost mulch system in which we laid down about 6 inches of compost directly onto what was previously pasture, and we did that using a tractor to get high volumes of organic matter put down quickly with just 2 of us here at the time. That allowed us to get started really quickly, and I've talked about in other videos how we were able to return all of the investment to get the garden started in just 8 weeks of sales in our first year. And that was really important to us, to be able to start quickly and have vegetables produced early on in our first year, and really opened up the opportunity for us to do that without a tremendous amount of work to prepare the ground, as is typical in most tillage systems. We've gone on and expanded our gardens from our initial blocks here. We call these the south beds, and we've installed 3 caterpillar tunnels and are growing the gardens this year to a maximum of 1/2 of an acre, which is really where we want to cap our vegetable production at Wild East. It's important that we can maintain work at a human scale using hand tools once the gardens are established, and that we're able to do so in a way that isn't extraordinarily laborious. And that 1/2 acre scale feels right for our farm. So we're gonna get to that point and stop growing from there, and we're just going to grow the operation and the productivity of the gardens by refining our systems and getting more efficient and more effective and improving the soil and scaling up in those ways rather than increasing our footprint. In small market gardens like this, it's important to be diligent about crop selection. So we lean heavily on greens. We have some really nice head lettuce coming in here. Mixed lettuce, arugula, Asian mix, and some root crops. And that's really our bread and butter. And one of the main reasons for that is it's not economic to produce certain vegetables on a small footprint. Things like winter squash and potatoes just don't quite fit our context in terms of making a good revenue per square foot in this tight space. Whereas things like greens and carrots and radishes, turnips, those all return really well in a quick, short amount of time. And that allows a small space to be utilized to grow more vegetables than is typically associated with that footprint, that acreage. So we're really leaning heavy on quick growing, quick turnaround crops that can grow throughout the year, and our customers are learning to know us for that, know us for having really reliable year-round production of some of these staple crops that we like to produce here. Now, when we first started, I was a big proponent of using wood chips in the paths, and wood chips have many benefits. It keeps the gardens really clean. It acts as an absorbent sponge for excess moisture that slowly releases into the beds, which means we have to irrigate less. But We've run into some issues in our time, place, and circumstance with the wood chips washing into beds. And unless we're diligent to rake them out, it has caused pockets of fertility issues where the wood chips get incorporated and temporarily tie up nitrogen. And that's a big enough drawback that we've really started to reconsider our approach. Another consideration with the wood chips where we are is that they're pretty hard to come by. We can buy chips in from a local sawmill, but that comes at a pretty high price. And we're interested in finding ways to mulch and maintain our paths without so much labor input, maintaining the chips and keeping them out of the beds, and in a way that comes at a smaller price tag. We've been experimenting with using straw in some of our paths, and in a previous video talking about our winter bed preparation trials, I talked about covering beds over winter with straw as a protective mulch layer, and then simply raking it into the paths. And we've liked that as a solution to the pathways, and the straw is quite nice to walk on. It can be challenging early on to get it out of the beds fully, but once it's received a few rains, it sits down really nice, and it's really pleasant if you like to work with bare feet in the gardens. And we have access to straw, organic straw, for really a good price, and it has multiple uses on the farm. So that's something we're considering. We're also considering bringing in to the crop rotation cover crops that we can rake the residue after we terminate into the pathways. So in that way, we'd be growing our own mulch and also doing so in a way that returns nutrients to the soil. I still like the wood chips as an edging mulch for edges of the gardens. It's very effective. Put a layer of cardboard down and thick wood chips on top. And we'll continue edging in this way to maintain a nice, clean, weed-free edge along our gardens. And that doesn't have the issue of water getting into the beds, and it also requires far fewer wood chips, and it's an amount that we can either produce ourselves or procure from utility companies or local arborists, whereas maintaining wood chips on all the garden beds just requires so much material, it's hard to get our hands on it. Beautiful lettuce mix. This is the third cutting, and we've been successfully getting really beautiful third cuttings off of this mix from Johnny's, and very happy with the way that it's been growing this spring. We have beautiful head lettuces. This one is my favorite red leaf. It's called Cherokee, and these are all going out this week and will soon be replaced with cucumbers. So I've talked about the caterpillar tunnels in previous videos, and we've been really happy bringing these onto the farm. In our first year in the winter, we really enjoyed the process of learning winter growing in our context, which is something that we didn't have a ton of experience with and are excited to refine over the years. But the tunnels are going to allow us to grow 4 seasons and really produce beautiful vegetables year-round. In the tunnels here, we've got our spring plantings. We have bok choy and some lettuce mix that are going to come out in the next 2 weeks to make room for tomatoes in 2 of the tunnels and cucumbers in 1 tunnel. And then we've got end beds in all of the tunnels of curly green kale that we'll be picking off all summer. So stay tuned for the jungle that will ensue in these spaces. I talked about getting started quickly, and we built these beds in February, end of February, and we were planting in them within a matter of weeks. And so that's just 4 weeks between first establishing this space and getting it planted out. We've got a mix of lettuces, collards, some carrots, and spinach in these beds. And we've set up the blocks in here to be able to accommodate caterpillar tunnels in the future. So there's beds of 4 separated with 14-inch paths, and then 3 feet wider paths between each block. Something that we've found can be a challenge with the deep compost system very initially is direct seeding into freshly laid material. Depends on what compost you have available, but our stuff is fairly coarse and seeds just don't germinate very well in it until it has time to break down a little bit more. So in these new blocks, we had some issues with poor germination in direct seeding and had to move some things around in the crop plan because we saw what we were transplanting in here was taking very well. And the older gardens that we built last year don't have any issues with germination. So that's something to consider if you're looking to establish a system like this, or perhaps expand a system like this that already exists. In our experience, we've had much more success when the compost is fresh to transplant into it. And then even after that first crop is out, you can really rest assured that direct seeded stuff will germinate well. As we continue to grow and expand the gardens, we're able to have more time to be more diligent in the establishment. In our first beds, it was a mad rush to get the gardens built and get vegetables cranking, and we were happy to do that. But having the extra space and having more time has allowed us to do a bit more intentional bed preparation and ground preparation. For example, in here, where the tarp is, we started by running pigs through, as we did with all the gardens, including where the caterpillar tunnels are over here. And then we followed that with a summer cover crop last year of buckwheat, followed that with a fall cover cropping of mustard that overwintered, and we just mowed that down and we're tarping it. We're going to establish another block of beds there. Here I'm standing in what is going to be the final expansion of the garden spaces. We're going to build these beds over the summer, but we've had pigs through here, we've had buckwheat, we've tarped it, and now there's a mix of oats and peas that are going to grow up over the summer, photosynthesize, and we're going to mow that and tarp it in June and get it ready to start building out these beds in July to begin planting fall crops into here. And we're exploring the idea of establishing these beds without using the tractor. Well, the tractor has the benefit of being able to move a lot of compost very quickly and make garden spaces like the ones that we have very quickly. It does have a compacting effect, obviously, driving the tractor over where the beds are going to be. We mitigated that somewhat in the most recently built beds by broad forking right where the tractors bend before the compost comes down. But we saw some drawbacks in our first garden from using that method in some pretty heavy compaction underneath the compost. So deep-rooted crops would grow great and have beautiful above-ground parts, but they'd hit that layer beneath the compost and really struggle. And it created some anaerobic conditions in some of the more waterlogged areas. So we're going to fix that gradually with broad forking and cover cropping, but we're trying to avoid that problem altogether in here. And our plan is to bring out a volunteer force to help mound raised beds manually and then apply that thick layer of compost above. But it's a bit more work, but we're very curious to see the difference in effects in establishing the garden in that way versus utilizing the tractor method, in part for our own curiosity and in part so that we can speak to the benefits or drawbacks of either method. So those are just some thoughts and updates in the market gardens. I think a takeaway from this video is just really accepting the fact that you can learn a lot from other folks and you can implement really well-tested methods, But ultimately, there's going to be learning and adapting that has to happen for everyone based on their circumstances. We love the deep compost system, and we're going to continue with it in establishing and maintaining our beds. There's virtually no weeds in these gardens, and that's a major plus in this system because we don't have to spend very much time on our hands and knees pulling out weeds. The weeds that do emerge are so few that a 20-minute run through a week to pick them out is all it takes, and it poses no issues for our production. We barely have to cultivate. We can do it all using hand tools, and that's all very important to us. Our plan is to be able to generate between $60,000 and $80,000 of revenue in this half-acre second-year market garden, and we think we can do that. And it fits really well with the numbers of the other enterprises as we continue to expand the farm. And I'm really excited for the future years of growing our production, our productivity, our plant vigor, our soil health, and our bottom line by just getting better as gardeners. And that takes experience and that takes time. And that's going to be an enriching process, and I'm excited to share what I can along the way. Thanks for watching another video, and please make sure to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.